Welcome back, everybody, to Pixel Perfect Podcast. Sorry that we haven't seen you all in a while. I'm Paige,
And
and today we're doing a double feature talking about Golden Compass and His Dark Materials. And forewarning, I'm very tired. As you can see from the box in the background, I'm in the middle of moving, so apologies in advance for low energy.
this wasn't even supposed to be a double feature, but then last week on like Monday we were texting and we were like, "Oh, no one's gonna watch," and we wouldn't watch either. And like, it's just a stressful, terrible week, and so we just didn't.
Yeah,
So
in
we are
like the
here.
11th hour, we were like, "Oh, there's an election going on. Nobody's gonna watch random people's podcasts, so maybe we'll just skip this week." So, well worth it because that was one of the most stressful weeks of my whole life.
You mean the most stressful year of your entire life? Because
It's
that week
just
that
it
week
just
lasted a year.
is
It just kept
steamrolling.
going.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's been November. It's like Groundhog Day. It's just November 3rd, November 3rd, November 3rd.
Yep. Yep. Over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
So, I mean, we had a really good outcome from the
Yes.
election. I don't feel at
Yeah.
peace about it until January 20th when Biden is in office. Then I will feel at peace on the inside.
That's pretty much where I'm at too, where I'm like, we'll see.
Yeah,
Like he's gonna be president, but like also we'll see at the same time.
right. It's like everything feels right now. So,
So yeah, so we're talking about the Golden Compass, the book, and then His Dark Materials, the HBO show.
yep. And this is a unique situation for us because I never read the book as a child. Somehow I just missed out on it. I don't know. I reading it, I was like, I definitely would have really liked this as a kid. So I'm kind of bummed I didn't get to experience it as a kid. But you did.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I grew up reading the Golden Compass.
Okay. How
I
old were
don't think
you?
I was on like the younger side. I think I was probably like 15ish.
Okay.
When I started reading them.
I thought like
I've only read the full series once.
okay.
Um, but I've read the Golden Compass way more than that.
Mhm. And would you say you liked it a lot?
It was definitely formative to like my understanding of fantasy, and I love the Golden Compass. The
Yeah.
series itself is a little weird. It gets a little kind of crazy,
Well, because it's
which I think is
very
why I've only read it once, but
yeah. We should probably explain what it's about before we forget.
probably.
um, who do you want? Me want?
Much better at descriptions, honestly, than I am.
Me? Okay,
Yes.
I'll take it this time. Golden Compass is set in an alternate universe very similar to our own, mainly in like England and a northern region I take to be mostly Finland based on the use of Lapland. But anyways, our protagonist is a 12-year-old girl named Lyra, even though I read the whole book going Lyra and was really, really annoyed when I started watching the show and they said Lyra. But she's a ward at a college and through some eavesdropping finds out there's this whole thing going on with discoveries about dust, which is like our equivalent of dark matter basically, and everyone in this world, their soul is like external from them in the form of a demon that's an animal. Um and so basically the whole book is uncovering this mystery of how some religious fanatics that rule the whole world are separating demons from children to prevent dust from settling on them because they think dust is original sin. If I think that about covers it.
And there's armored bears,
There's armored
and
bears.
there's witches and balloons and
Yeah.
um
Yeah. They very
yeah,
frequently mention places that are like that you'd recognize, like Oxford and England, but then like there's some twist some things. Like America is just Texas, which I think is really funny. And then like Lapland is I think Finland, and I can't they mention Alaska at some point, but I can't remember if that's there's
I
also
don't.
alternate worlds. There's like that there's the whole
Yeah,
thing.
it's like
Yeah.
you get into the real world in the later books, like our world
Mhm.
in later books, and it looks like they're gonna do it. They did it in His Dark Materials, and then they're gonna continue doing it in season 2.
Yeah. They did it way
So
earlier in His Dark Materials than they did in the first
yeah,
book.
it's nowhere in the Golden Compass book.
Mm-mm.
So
Yeah. Like your first interaction with them going into another world is literally like the last 10 pages when Lyra steps in after Lord Asriel to go look at that world parallel to theirs.
dickhead.
Oh man, fuck that guy. Fuck that guy so hard. Adults in this book definitely like a lot of them suck.
it's a bit like Series of Unfortunate Events, and that it's very distinctly about children and their experiences with adults specifically who don't listen to them.
Yeah.
Um, and how Lyra really has to kind of earn everything.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a bit like Series of Unfortunate Events in that way,
That makes
where
sense.
adults suck and kids are doing their best.
And it's kind of dark too. Like with
Yeah,
a 12-year-old protagonist, and then I was reading the fight between Yorick and Yofor when it was very gory. I was like, children read this?
I don't think it's as dark as what the show. Like, I think my main issue with the show is that this book, for all of its occasional moments, is fundamentally a young adult children's book.
Yep.
The TV show is not a children's show.
Mm-mm.
It is distinctly very much made for adults, and that is kind of why I hate it.
Oh, it was awful. I'm so glad. At first when you texted me earlier and you were like, "I'm excited for this episode," I was like, "Oh no, did she love the show?" I can't cope with that.
No,
I It has rave reviews and I don't get why. It was
no,
sloppy.
neither.
It was boring. Like so painfully boring to watch. I couldn't take it. I watched 5 episodes and I was amazed I made it that far.
The thing is good. James McAvoy is a national treasure as always.
Mhm.
But like, I just, I do, I think it's a bad adaptation for one.
Yep.
And I'm not just saying that because they're not shoving in all the book stuff. I'm not saying that because they change things. So obviously, every time you move from book to film, there's going to be changes have to be made and transitions have to be made, and stuff's always going to get changed and left out and put back in. Like, it's always going to happen. But I don't think it's a good adaptation. And I'm not sure it's necessarily a good show either.
Mm-mm.
But my husband watched one episode and enjoyed that. And I'm wondering if part of that is because he had absolutely zero interaction with the book ahead of time. But
I
I'm wondering because I was my impression as I was rereading the book is that you were not gonna like the book.
actually really liked it. I mean,
Okay.
as an adult, I was like, like there are components here that are bothering me, but I was able to step back and be like, okay, but if you had experienced this when normal children experience this, these wouldn't be problems for you and whatnot. And I actually really liked Philip Pullman's writing. I found it very pretty, I guess. I don't know. He was enjoyable to read. And I think if as a 15-year-old or younger, I definitely would have loved it. I mean, there was like
Okay.
a female protagonist. There was armored fucking bears, which are great. Alternate dimensions. It checks all my boxes.
I feel like too so basically what you're saying is you were able to appreciate it for what it was, where it was at,
Yeah.
rather than trying to mold it to what it necessarily what it would have been as an adult book. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, yeah. I was able to kind of like separate myself and be like, think about how you would have liked this if you got to read it at the age you were supposed to be.
And I think that like I think it still holds up. Like,
It
you know what I
does.
mean? Like, I think there's a lot of interesting things going on. I definitely feel like Philip Pullman has this ability that not a lot of people have of layering. So like as a kid, you don't pick up on certain things, and then as an adult, you pick up on so much more. And so even if it's distinctly a children young adults book,
Hmm.
there's layers that adults can pick up on.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Is kind of where I'm at with the book.
Yeah, I would agree with
Um,
that. Um,
but yeah, I grew up with it and I love it.
yeah, I really wish I had read it a lot sooner. I don't know if I'm gonna read the other ones because I am an adult, so there are little things where I'm like, this is not great for me, but I think it's a really cool concept. I thought it was really funny how I read. I probably it's not Wikipedia, so I don't know how accurate it is. But he got so much flack for it having like anti-religion themes. When he like went on record of being like, he's like, I feel like I'm not actually getting that much flack. He's like, Harry Potter's over here taking all the heat, and meanwhile I'm just skating through.
No, and it's hilarious because he is pretty deliberately anti-religion in this
Oh,
book.
it is heavily the theme of like analyzing how a religious controlled society is like bad.
And just the willingness I think it's the fear. Like it's interesting because I feel like this book is almost a condemnation of extremes
Hmm.
because you have like Lord Asriel who's like very not religious in certain ways.
Yeah, doesn't he want to kill God essentially? Isn't that his whole MO is, like, destroying dust or God or something? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I know that the show does that.
Okay.
I'm not necessarily sure that the book does, but I'm not 100% confident in that statement.
Do you remember what
But I know
his
that he
fate
definitely,
is?
like, he wants to, like, find the root of dust.
Yeah, he's, like, very that's, like, why he goes to the other world is because he's saying the other worlds is the source of dust, which
Yes.
I mean, I know I just said I probably wouldn't, but now I'm curious about because I when I was reading descriptions of the other books and they made the mention of dust being equivalent to dark matter, I was like, so does dark matter behave differently in their universe? Because dark matter is certainly not clinging to adults in our universe.
The universe to pieces and put it together again, Marissa, we could find the source of dust and stifle it forever,
Yeah, he wants to like
is what he says. Yeah.
he
So
wants to destroy sin. Well, I guess he doesn't view it
bas-
as sin like they
basically,
do,
but
but
like, it's almost like he doesn't have enough fear, and then all the religion people have too much fear,
way too much fear.
and so they're just trying to. But it ends up with the same goal of just trying to destroy something they don't understand. But it's like,
Yeah.
but the willingness, I think, this the willingness to throw children under the bus
It's
in this book
yeah.
is really prevalent as well. Like the willingness to go to extraordinary lengths for these extremes is basically.
Yeah. And it's hard to read. It's very, very sad and effed up.
Hmm.
It's very tragic.
There's a lot of. What did you think of the kind of moving around of stuff in the book versus the show? Because I was thinking about like how in the book, Miss Coulter's the Gobbler's like very early on. Like the second she appears and they mention
Mhm.
a golden monkey, you're like, oh, that's the lady
Yeah.
who like took all the kids and threw their letters in the fire. That's the same woman.
Yeah. That
And in
it
the show, you don't find out for a
no.
long time.
And there's a rando with a fox who's abducting the children. That did bother
Yeah.
me because I was like, I feel like part of Miss Coulter's character is her like unbelievable cruelty, and it added to the fear that she was the one physically abducting the children. So when she was like a step away from it in the show, I was like, I'm like, I don't know. It made her impact less for me.
I think so too, that the part of the point of the introduction to her is the danger of her and her charm and her charisma and her ability to be like, I have chocolate, come with me. I'm going to send a letter to your parents. You're going to go off to a great fun place. Like, you know what I mean? Like, these children, like, I feel like there's a big difference between the children being kidnapped
Yeah.
and kind of what happens to these kids.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Um, and I feel like there's an added like layer there of talking about like what adults do and what adults are willing to do and how that connects to children that isn't there in the show,
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
right. And yeah, just it makes her much scarier in the books because like as the reader that she is the gobbler. So like when Lyra's with her, you're like, ah no, or Lyra, fuck. I'm gonna do that forever. But yeah, in the show, I also really don't like how like I know I guess the book kind of had its moments of like, oh, this character's info dumping, but it's like a kid's book, so whatever. Um but like the way Lyra finds out about her father's identity in the show bothers me because I feel like Miss Coulter's so careful that she wouldn't have slipped like that.
I also feel like there's a deliberateness to Miss Coulter not telling her,
Yeah,
right? Because like then you put her closer to figuring out the truth,
right.
because then she's got questions about her mother, and then it's also like I didn't like that either. I don't think it makes as much sense. And they made Mrs. Coulter like this weird, like stares off at bathtubs and talks about
What
jumping off
was
buildings. And I was like, what the
that about?
fuck is going on here?
It's like I feel like they're trying to make her and even Lord Asriel to an extent. I feel like they're trying to make them more likable or more like they're trying to get empathy out of the audience for these two characters, and it's like you're not supposed to empathize with them. They're the villain. Like that just
Right,
is what it is.
right. And there's nothing wrong with like trying to make a more well-rounded villain, but like don't I I guess that when you read the book, you have this sense that Lyra is a possession to her parents.
Hmm.
And in the movie, I mean the show, there's kind of the sense of like, well, they really care about her. And I'm like, but they don't though. And that's kind of part of the point.
Yeah.
And it's just like when he wades through the water to bring her to the door, and he's like, I have to take, like, you have to take her, like,
Yeah.
this is, I have no choice. And I'm like, Lord Asriel was just like, fuck you, dropped her off at Jordan College and was basically like, take care of my kid, bitch.
He's like, I'm out. Peace.
Like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
I feel like what they were trying to do was not successful. Like, you
No.
know what I mean? I think that's what makes it a bad adaptation. Is they took all these themes, they took all these things, these plot points, and tried to put them together, and did not do it successfully to the point where I'm like, I buy into this.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't like the juxtaposition of the shit happening with Lord Boreal in the alternate world. I think it would have been much more interesting to just stick with the book and like have the major cliffhanger at the end was them stepping into a new world. So then you're like on the edge of your seat thinking about them going to it in the second season. But
You don't
they
know what it is.
yeah,
You know
but
nothing about it.
meanwhile, and it slowed the pace down of the whole show too. Like every time it was like a Lord Boreal scene, I'd whip out my phone and be like, "All right, I'll wait for this part to be over because I really don't care."
Like, if I recall correctly, though I could be very wrong, Golden Compass is Lyra's story. Subtle Knife is
Wills,
Will's story,
yeah,
and then the third book is them together.
right.
So I can see why putting them together would make sense theoretically,
Hmm.
but I really see the Golden Compass, the original, like that first book, as Lyra's story for a reason.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I just like, I don't know.
Yeah. It felt very clunky and not like I read a review that said the first 4 episodes were really bad, but then if you kept going with it, like the action ramped up. And I watched episode 5, and I have to vehemently disagree. It's still boring as fuck.
It was, and it's just in the book. There's moments where of calm,
Hmm.
but like I wouldn't call it boring
No.
by any stretch of the imagination. And this is just a side note, but it really, really bothers me that the bears in like Auric, I don't remember, is it Auric
Yorick.
and Yorick and Eifer? Yeah, how they fought without their armor on.
That was so infuriating. The whole thing was like the difference between their armor being like elegant and useful and like their two personalities.
Point, and like the whole thing with like armor being their soul, and they craft it and they perfect it and it's
Yeah.
made for them, and then they fought without their armor, which tells me that whoever wrote this fucking series missed the themes
Mhm.
of the fucking book.
Yeah,
And it's
absolutely.
stupid because Philip Pullman is executive producer of this TV show, and I'm like, Philip Pullman, do better.
Come on, Phil. That's crap. I hate that. Ugh.
Like, it seems like such a minor point, but it really feels impactful to me because it was part of a larger discussion the book was having.
Right. Yeah.
And it was also about, like, the idea, and I'm muddling on this section, like this my thought process on it a little bit.
Mhm.
But like the whole thing of like the bears not trying to be human because they're not human, and that just
Mhm.
being confusing and upsetting, and they're not really sure what they're supposed to do.
Right.
And him coming in, Oric coming in and being like, "We're bears, bitches."
Ugh.
Um, and just this idea of like sticking to your nature and
Yeah.
being who you are.
Right. And being
And
happy
I
with who
feel
you
like,
are.
yeah, I don't know.
They bungled it. They bungled it hard.
As far as I'm concerned, yes.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm certainly not gonna watch the second season. I don't recommend it
No,
to
I
anybody.
can't even finish the first season.
It's
I can't even
so
finish the
bad.
second episode. And I know that that makes it look bad in terms of like how can you criticize if you haven't watched enough of it? And like I do get that point and acknowledge that point, but at the same
Mhm.
time, like if I can't even get through it and I have to watch it for a podcast,
Yeah, exactly.
ugh.
I mean, ugh. I also want to talk about Lyra in the show because she really bothered me for some
I
reason.
hated her.
She was oh
I hated her.
ah I don't
I
I
think I think that it was a miss. I don't. I think the actress was very good.
Mhm.
I think it was a miscast.
Yeah. And she's
That's
clearly like even though she's only 3 years older than her character, she's clearly too old. Like she is not a child. You can
No.
tell she's a teenager. It's very apparent, especially when she's in scenes with Roger, who is a literal child, who is adorable, by the way. I love Roger. And then poor little Billy Costa. God, I did cry at that scene. I had no emotional connection to any of these characters, but when Billy Costa died, I definitely cried. But yeah, she was so frustrating. They gave her like weird lines that other characters would say, like when they're um talking about the Cloud Pine with the consult. They took Farder Korum's lines, a few of them, and gave them to her, and it made no sense because, like, I know they were trying to portray her as like a really clever child, but I feel like they never.
Lyra's clever enough in the books to run around without giving her other people's lines.
Yeah, exactly. I
And
feel it's clumsy
she's
in the
also
show.
childlike. She's distinctly 12. Like, you
Yes,
read the book and you're like, yep, she's 12.
absolutely.
Like, she's smart, she's clever, but she's also ignorant and doesn't know understand certain things. And like, she's a child.
Yeah.
She's 12. So like, I thought that like they aged her up too much,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought that they made her too like aggressive, but in a different way that Lyra feels aggressive to me.
Yeah, she was too articulate. I'm like, no 12-year-old sounds like this.
And Lyra doesn't either.
Right.
Like Lyra distinctly sounds like someone who's been running around with like street kids
Absolutely.
for 12 years.
Right.
And I kind of, okay, this is going to be another point that I'm going to talk about in a second, but like there was also that there were those moments where like, oh no, I don't want secrets, and she hands the ethiometer back to
Mm-hmm.
the master, and I'm like, what was the point of that moment? Like, was it just to inflate the drama for a second? Like, it doesn't sound
Yeah.
like Lyra. Like, it doesn't. Like, it didn't make any sense to me.
Right? Like the whole reason she snuck into the retiring room was because she was like, I want to learn shit.
Like, and the thing to me, I didn't like this either. I didn't like how they sucked the community out of this show.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just her and Roger.
Yeah.
There's no community. There's no, she's growing up with street kids. There's no factions. There's no fights with other colleges. There's no,
Yeah.
like, and there's, the thing is that there's supposed to be a distinct difference between when she's at Jordan College and why she feels so stifled when she goes to
Mm-hmm.
live with Mrs. Coulter. And I don't think that distinction was made clearly enough.
Not at all. Yeah. It felt like they dedicated time to world building components they shouldn't have, and then like left other things out that would have been really crucial to you, like feeling like you could connect to the characters. Like it's too much world building, not enough character building.
I just didn't care.
Yeah.
That was what the fundamental thing of the show is that I just don't give a shit.
Not at all. But yeah, I mean, I think it would have helped too with crafting Lyra's cleverness is that a lot of the things she learns in the book she does by like sneaking around or like overhearing things or like remembering what adults are talking about around her, but like you don't ever see that really happening in the show besides the retiring room.
I think they didn't really make her clever. I think they made her seem clever.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a difference.
Yeah. I think that's a really good way of summarizing it. It's like she appears clever, but she isn't clever. She's just saying things like an adult would that don't make any sense.
And I also, the way she learns to read the ethiometer through experimentation and trying and like I don't know why, but the moment of her yelling at the ethiometer, "Where's Roger?" really like bothered me. Like that joke that the guy makes in the recap I sent you of just like treats it like
Siri.
it's Siri, and I'm like,
it's true. She she instantly figures it out. Like there's no.
Oh, you know what it is? The Lyra in the show has no curiosity.
Yeah, she's kind of a
And
blob.
that's like the peak. If you had to boil Lyra down to one thing, it would be curiosity and passion.
Yeah.
And I feel like the show and the character in the show is kind of flat.
Super
and
flat.
Doesn't have that same level of like. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Like she's like a curious, like energetic kid in the book, but she's like very flat and just feels like a chess piece being moved on the board for the purpose of the plot in the show.
The actress. I don't want to rag on the actress. I think it's the writing, and I think that she was miscast.
Yeah, I think she did what she was able to do with it.
Yeah. but I don't know what they're doing is basically my thing with the show. Is like
Yeah.
I don't know why Mrs. Coulter is staring off at bathrooms and talking about jumping off buildings. Like I don't understand
That really bothered me
where they're
too.
going with things.
Yeah, because I feel like that's like a dangerous comparison to make is like, look at this person who like might be struggling with depression or mental illness who is also a villain. It's like, I don't like that. That makes me feel icky.
And it's also I correct me if I'm wrong because you watch more of the show than I do, but the whole scariness of Miss Coulter in the book too is her extreme fascination with basically what is child
hmm
torture. Her like extreme fascination with the pulling and like you know what I mean. Like they talk about how in the book about how they had to release people from stress, from like emotional induced trauma
Yeah.
from doing these experiments, and she's just insanely fascinated by them and intrigued and wants to watch them.
Yep.
And that was like that streak was like a core part of her character.
Yeah.
And I feel like they just it I feel like they went so hard trying to make her sympathetic that she lost that kind of core of like the point of her being.
Yeah. I can agree with that. I mean, the at the end of episode 5 is when Lyra gets snatched by the gobblers and it's at Bolvangar.
No idea.
I'm trying.
Don't
Um,
ask me.
in the next
I don't
episode,
know how anything's pronounced.
in the next episode is when I think Lyra is about to be severed. But just from watching that review video you sent me, the guy said something about Lyra's just picked to be next because her thing's about to change, and so it definitely sounds like the show had Mrs. Coulter arrive just in time to stop it. Versus the reason Lyra gets picked to be severed is because she's listening. She's in like the freaking air ducts,
Sneaking.
listening in
Yeah.
on like some major dudes, hearing them talk about how creepy Miss Coulter is.
She's like trying to figure out how to escape because and the thing is too, the Egyptians arrive just in time to save them because there's chaos.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, but like actually this entire thing was Lyra being very smart and figuring out an escape plan and spraying it to the other children and getting everybody out.
Yeah, and then meeting up with like the
Like,
witch's demon and then releasing the other demons who'd been severed from their children. Like I don't think that
yeah,
any of that was present. I think it was just like, whoops, everything
oh,
happened to align all at once.
right. Like I feel like the Lyra doesn't do anything.
Mm-mm.
Like I don't like I just the Lyra in the books is so impactful to me because she was like she feels a lot like me in the sense that she's kind of like aggressive and she doesn't really think sometimes and like she's just you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
obviously I'm not a prophecy girl, but like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I relate to her really hard and then you watch the show and it's like okay, but she's not taking risks. She's not like
Mm-mm.
Lyra in the books is like constantly doing things and taking risk and pushing and just like
Yeah.
and I think the problem is that Lyra should be the core of the story. So if your Lyra's not good, then like oh,
Well, that's how fighting course, because like you said earlier, they didn't make the show for kids, but your main protagonist is a kid. So it's like,
right.
what is the focus here? Like,
No, it's the same fucking problem, and people can fucking fight me on this, but like it's the same fucking problem with like the Hobbit movies where they tried it's a children's book and they tried to make it all dark and gritty
Yep.
because they wanted it to be like Lord of the Rings, and so it sucked.
Yep.
Like, I mean, there are many reasons why The Hobbit sucked, and I will gladly fight you on it. I don't give a shit. But like, I just I it's they tried. It has the HBO problem. They tried to make it like a
Yeah.
weird Game of Thrones ripoff, but
hmm
like a TV-14 version of Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck you, it's a kids book,
Yeah. So
and
it's
it should have stayed that way.
so it should either
Like,
stay that way or they should go hardcore and just make it like a super weird adaptation and like age everyone up and just do something totally new. But like it's got split focuses.
show like Sesame Street, but it needs to be like
mm.
accessible, and there can be layers where adults get it and adults enjoy it. But excuse me, I keep burping. There's like tons of shows that have those adult layers to them.
Yeah, Avatar: The Last
But
Airbender
are
is like the best example of that.
yeah, that can be watched by children.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I don't understand the decision to try and make it an adult show.
No.
I think it's just I think that was you're right, the wrong move from the get-go, and so everything came after that was just
Just
yeah,
bad.
yeah.
Just not good. And everyone
So
likes it so much, and I don't.
I
I'm
know.
like, what am I missing?
I know. I don't get it. Like, I just feel like I don't know. I don't get it. I don't understand why people like it because
Yeah,
I couldn't get through it at
I'm
all.
at a loss.
But like again, like Cody was enjoying it, and I think it's partly because he has no connection to what it should be.
Okay, well, I started watching the show before I started reading the book, and I still hated it. So
Okay, so never mind.
Cody's just easily pleased, I think.
The concepts that the show brings up are still interesting.
Yeah, for sure, because it's
Like
got like
it's
the still got the anti-religion themes and my chapstick. The
and the
concept
whole
of like the
demons and
demons. That
yeah.
was really hard for me. Is like reading about it was okay. Watching animals hurt each other, I had a hard time with that. I was like, this is not fun.
I think too. I got annoyed from the show from the get-go when they opened up with text.
Ooh, yeah. I was like, oh, text narration, my
Yeah, and I
favorite.
don't have an inherent problem with text. There are movies like obviously Star Wars does text,
hmm
but like this one felt so unnecessary because there was nothing that they told us that couldn't have been inferred by watching the fucking show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like and by maybe changing a few lines of dialogue. Like nothing they told us was needed to be told to us. And I feel like that's kind of like emblematic of the problem with the show is just like the decisions. I don't know.
The decisions are bad. Wish I had looked
Yeah.
up who like directed this so I could see what else they've worked on. Would have been a good thought.
Now I'm looking up who. Go away notifications.
I mean, I'm like
So it
certain
looks
things.
like they had you because the TV show thing where there's different directors.
Oh, that's
But
annoying.
Jamie Child seems to be the main director.
Okay.
Oh, and he did Doctor Who. Late Doctor Who. That's not good.
Slate Doctor. I don't know anything about Doctor Who.
Doctor Who turned bad.
That's what I
He did 4
heard.
episodes of Doctor Who during the bad period,
Okay. That seems fair.
and nothing else I've heard of. But that doesn't short TV series.
Well, Jamie
So
Child, fix your life.
I mean, I think like the real problem would be the writers.
Yeah, definitely. It's like a combo for sure. But yeah, I mean,
But the problem is that Philip Pullman was very, very involved.
it's
And
like
I'm like,
there was something else like that where the person was really involved, and I still was like, what the hell? This sucked. Was it Harry Potter?
I don't
I
know.
don't remember. I have no idea. I mean, I guess I don't. Do you have other things that you wanted to touch on about it?
No, we can move on.
Okay.
I don't.
I was gonna say my final thoughts were to be don't watch the show because it just sucks ass. If you are an adult, try reading it. It may not be for you, but it is. I think it's very interesting and it's worth the read if you were into that genre when you were a kid and you maybe like missed out on it. Or if you're a parent, definitely have your kid read it. They're gonna have a fun time. For 1995, it holds up really well. I mean, the women can't do anything components kind of frustrating, but
You have a really strong, independent female protagonist
that's true.
who's pushing boundaries. And I mean, you have Mrs. Coulter, who's a villain, but like
Yep.
who managed to gain power in this world by basically tricking everyone into thinking that she was safe,
Right.
which I find kind of impressive.
Yeah.
So, I don't think it's like Game of Thrones where it's devoid of women being able to, like, you know what I mean? Like, I
hmm
think that there's definitely elements to it that are, and you have like the witches
And
who
you
are
have
boss as shit.
Ma Costa too is like caring, nurturing, but she's
Absolutely.
still like a powerful woman. So yeah, I guess he did a good job,
Yeah.
like having your different archetypes and having them be like meaningful characters.
I feel like if you're trying to attack or like trying to, I shouldn't say attack, if you're trying to comment on modern religion in a backhanded way,
hmm
you can't do that without including patriarchy.
That is actually a very fair point. That does make sense, especially
So
because it like literally the religion rules their worlds. Like they're ruled by a place called the Magisterium, and it's like they're like the government basically.
don't think you can do that without being patriarchal.
I think
I
it
don't
makes a lot
think
of
it would have
sense.
served his goals.
Yeah, that's very fair.
So,
So yeah, read the
yeah.
books. Don't watch the show. Save
Yeah.
yourself some time.
I feel like there's like other things I wanted to say, but I can't remember what they are now, but maybe I'll tweet them later.
There you go. I didn't make a list or any notes because chaos. So I just winged it. And next week
Yeah.
we are doing Edgar Wright movies.
Yeah, that's going to require a lot of prep work that I definitely should have started already.
How many movies has he done? I looked at our calendar earlier today and I was like, shit.
So the ones that I would watch is I would rewatch Scott Pilgrim.
I just did earlier this year, so I think I'm good on that one.
The Shaun of the Dead movies.
Okay. There's more than one Shaun of the Dead?
There's Shaun of the Dead, and well, it's technically like a weird trilogy. I think that they call it the Ice Cream Trilogy.
Okay. Is
Um,
Hot Fuzz
but
included
it's
in
Shaun of
that?
the Dead, Hot Fuzz. Have you ever seen Hot Fuzz?
I have, yeah.
And then
Several times.
World's End.
Okay, I haven't seen World's End.
And then Baby Driver. I think are the ones that like
Baby Driver. Fascinating.
Baby Driver.
Wow.
So I would do those 5.
Cool. I think those were the exact 5 that were in that like image I shared on our lineup for the week. So perfect.
Yeah. The big ones that I feel like are more emblematic of his work. So I feel like he's done other stuff, but I feel like those are the ones that we have to hit.
All right, cool. That'll be a fun episode next week, and I will be in my new apartment. There'll probably still be boxes everywhere, but it's fine.
Fancy.
Oh man, should be a good time. All right, that it? That's all we wrote?
I think so. Does anybody have any questions?
Oh, I forgot about that part. Wow, we skipped 1 week and I don't remember our format.
It's okay. I don't think we will because we usually don't. But are anybody out there who's got comments or questions or just wants to be acknowledged?
Just a little wave.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, if we end this and then you're like, oh shit, I had something, you know, you can always tweet at us or hit us up on Instagram. It's at Pixel Perfect Podcast on Instagram and at PixPerfPod on Twitter because Pixel Perfect Podcast was taken on Twitter and I'm very angry about it.
No, I will never stop resenting the people who have Pixel Perfect Podcast but haven't updated since 2017.
Yeah. Like this is our 30th episode, by the way. So we are like well beyond what they hit.
Yeah, we resent you, Pixel Perfect Podcast.
I mean, we don't hate you as people, but we do wish you would relinquish your Twitter handle.
Yes, we do wish we would let go all of the Twitter handles and also take down yourself off Stitcher and stuff because when people search Pixel Perfect Podcast, you're what shows up and not us.
Damn it. All right. Well, I think that's it for this evening, so we'll catch you all next week.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.